Hey fellow babies, welcome back to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. Hope you're subscribing for $4 a month. If you're not and you're watching on YouTube, I'll forgive you, but if you're watching for free, if you're a freeloader, you got to follow me on Twitter at Michael Pachter. I need a new record number of followers. I've been stuck at 43,500 for like 3 years. I must just frickin' suck. Our first question this week from Lonely Step on the SIFTD site. The latest Far Cry, this is your editorial because I don't agree with you, seems to be targeting extreme conservatism Christianity and takes place in rural America. There's a petition from these groups to boycott Ubisoft games. From a business perspective, is there a point where controversy hurts more than it helps? All right, I have to say, first of all, it's a cult, okay? So I don't know. I obviously haven't seen any more of the Far Cry game than you've seen, so we'll see what they do with that. I don't think cults are necessarily Christian-based. There are obviously all sorts of different types of cults. I remember one in San Diego where people thought a spaceship was going to come and take them off to a new planet, and they all poisoned themselves. I can't remember how they died. That was like 20 years ago. The Jonestown people, there was no Jesus involved. It was like the supreme being was James Jones or whatever his name was. I think you're wrong. I mean, I think it's not Christianity. I think your comment about extreme conservatism is also misguided. Again, cults aren't necessarily conservative. I mean, they could be, sacrificing animals for the greater, glory of whatever being they worship. I think where you're getting confused, and I apologize, I shouldn't pick on you, but I think where there's confusion is that rural America and conservative are synonyms for one another, and rural America and Christian are synonyms for one another. So yes, in a rural setting, you're likely to find more conservatives and Christians than you are to find liberals and atheists. But that doesn't mean that a cult that locates in a rural setting is necessarily either conservative or Christian. And so I know you're right that there is a petition from conservative Christian groups to boycott Ubisoft. There's a great term, I discovered it on Twitter. I don't know who came up with it. Pepe the Frog came up with it, but it's called snowflake, and it's a person who melts because they're criticized and they can't take it and they hate it. So the people who are petitioning are snowflakes, because if you have a game that takes place in rural America, it could be about about animal worshipers. It could be about hippies who live in rural America. It could be a liberal group in rural America. It doesn't mean that the group that you're targeting is natural to that territory. And in fact, it takes place in Montana. I don't remember how many people live in Montana, but it isn't very many. It's under 1 million. They just had a congressional election there, and the congressman represents the entire state. And I think congressional districts have 700,000 constituents. I'm not even sure Montana has 700,000 people. So the reason this cult in this Far Cry game is in Montana is it's a big open place that you can go and live without anybody hassling you, and you can have your cult. So it doesn't mean that the members all came from Montana and they were all conservative and they're all Christian. I doubt that's the goal. Sure, Ubisoft is snarky and they're French and they're probably making fun of Americans for having, being overly conservative. But I don't think, in fact, that they're that bold that they're going to take on conservative Christians, because there's nothing wrong with being conservative. It's just a way of thinking, and there's certainly nothing wrong with being Christian. It's a belief system. So no, I think that if the game in fact does have an assault against conservatives and Christians, it's a bad thing, and I will boycott the game, and I don't think that's going to happen. So back to your question. Is there a point where controversy hurts more than it helps? Fortunately, the game's not done yet. It's not coming out until February of 2018. So we've got 10 more months, I think, or 9 more months before this game comes out. They're going to make sure that when it's done, nobody's going to be offended. So the answer to your question is yes, The controversy now has you asking me a question, me answering it, lots of press, a lot of buzz, and then when they solve it, and it turns out that these whatever they are, these extreme cult people are pig worshippers who think aliens are going to come and pick them up, everybody's going to say, no problem, let's kill them. You know, actually, let's hope that they do something horrible like skin live kittens. And so you'll want to kill them too. But they're not going to be conservative and they're not going to be Christian. It's just, there's no chance Ubisoft's that dumb. So yes, I think the controversy only helps because it makes people aware of it. And it's going to turn out that they're going to make these people so bad, you're going to want to kill them too. Next question comes from Twitter from @PocketMobsters. Does Xbox Games Pass strain relations between Microsoft and retailers like with Netflix and Blockbuster? Yeah. Remember that Netflix doesn't actually rent you very much content that they own. Microsoft is renting you a lot of content that they own. Microsoft content's like 6 or 7% of the stuff that you get on the Games Pass, and maybe even as much as 10. The publishers are very careful not to put new stuff on there, so it's hard to find a third-party game that's more recent than 2 years old. And I don't think you're going to get anything that's more recent than 2 years old. Netflix is not. It didn't compete with Blockbuster. So again, Blockbuster hated Netflix when Netflix was DVD by mail. That was a direct competition. They were renting the same stuff, new movies, but by mail versus in store. Netflix streaming, which is much more analogous to the Xbox Games Pass, is not a competitor to a Blockbuster. There's no new stuff on Netflix with Netflix streaming. That's a slight exaggeration. There's new Disney stuff, but there's no new other stuff. So if you want to watch a Warner Brothers movie or a Paramount movie that's on DVD, it's not available on Netflix. Microsoft is now that way because the publishers want to make sure that they can still sell their content. So they don't want a piece of the Microsoft subscription fee. They want to sell you the full game. So far, everybody's withholding content that's newer than 2 years old. So yes, I think it strains relations with guys like GameStop, but truthfully, nobody stopped buying games because they subscribe to Microsoft Games Pass. And to be honest with you, I think the free stuff you get on Xbox Live is worth more than the stuff you get on Xbox Games Pass. They consistently give you great games. You get 2 a month and they're great. So I actually predict Xbox Games Pass is a disaster and they will shut it down in a couple of years because I don't think they have any subscribers and nobody cares. I have yet to meet somebody who has joined and says, it's awesome, what a great value. Our next question from SIFTD from Substance 104. Will Nintendo Switch sell more than Xbox One worldwide this year? Close. Close. I'd say Switch could sell as many as 14 million, and if that happens, that's more than Xbox One. Xbox One's probably going to sell about 10, 11 million. But again, Microsoft doesn't tell you, and there's no way to measure anymore. But I'd say Xbox One is on track for 10, 11 million a year. Switch is going to do that many, 10, 11. It could sell more. It really depends, and I need to get through a holiday season and see. My bias is that Switch is a handheld, and it's a really good handheld, but it's $300. Xbox is a really good console, and it's $300. So if you want a console, you're buying an Xbox, you're not buying a Switch. If you want a handheld, you're buying a Switch, you're not buying an Xbox. So close, but I think that the portability of the Switch probably slightly dictates in its favor. I think the Japanese market, is going to buy 3 or 4 million of them as opposed to Microsoft that's probably not even sold 1 million there yet. So there's a lot more demand in Japan for Nintendo-based products. I mean, DS sells, well, not anymore, but DS has sold probably 20 million in Japan in lifetime. So yeah, I think it'll probably sell slightly more, but it's not going to sell, 2x or 3x. And over time, I think the Switch will be fine. I mean, it'll do 50 million. If price comes down the curve, question is, will it do 100? I don't think so. I mean, that's 20 million a year. 10 million a year for 5 years, for sure. 20 million a year ever? Probably not. So when people talk about this thing being as big as the Wii, they're crazy. Our last question from Twitter this week, @crazy_fox. Why do we not see new competitors coming into the traditional console market? You will. It's a pretty shitty business. I mean, that's the easy answer, but you will. I think Amazon is entering. I think that Apple's entering. It's just that they're not going to make consoles the way you understand a console. You know, so back in the 80s when the NES came out, you know, we didn't have PCs. And I know the camera's not going to catch it, but I'm sitting here with my desktop right there, my laptop right here, my phone right here. I've got a tablet in my briefcase on the floor. I've got 19, I think, CPUs and GPUs in my house. And back in 85, I had one. So right now I've got 19 CPU GPUs with vibrant color screens and pretty decent graphics cards, even my phone. So, you know, I can't get a full-fledged console experience on my phone. I can on my laptop. I can on my desktop. So why do I need a new console? You know, why can't I buy a Fire TV and get the same experience? And the truth is, Amazon is introducing a television called Element, that's a brand, with Fire TV built in. So instead of just being a smart TV, it's actually got Fire TV built in. How long before we get a TV with a full-fledged CPU and GPU built in? Because the Xbox One chipset is like 25 bucks. So why not put that in a 65-inch 4K TV and charge me an extra $25 for it? And then when you have those, voila, you don't need a console. All you need is a controller. It's got Fire TV built in, use your controller, everything communicates, download to whatever, your PC, and your hard drive in your PC will be good enough, and your television has the built-in console happening. So again, you're not going to see traditional consoles because they don't really need to exist anymore. You're going to see console features built into other devices like PCs, like tablets, like televisions, like Fire TVs and Apple TVs. So I predict Apple and Amazon are in this business before the end of the decade. Decade ends 2020. So before 2020, you're going to get an Apple console and an Amazon console. They're just not going to be called consoles. They're going to be called Alexa or Echo or Apple or something. So one more reminder, got to follow me on Twitter if you're watching this for free, @MichaelPachter, because I'm at a near record number of followers, and I just selfishly want to get to 50,000 followers, so I need another 7,000 of you. Please, 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 if you're watching this, don't unfollow, just ignore. You can put me on ignore if you hate what I say. I actually am kind of entertaining on Twitter. Anyway, thanks for joining us, fellow babies. We will see you next week.